Which candidate received the most votes in the 2024 presidential election? Here's a hint. It wasn't Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Trump captured about 77 million votes, and Harris had about 75 million votes. But none of the above actually won, with approximately 90 million eligible Americans who refused to vote for either candidate. This isn't new. About 100 million Americans didn't vote in 2020, and about 90 million sat out in 2016. The establishment claims that these citizens are lazy or too busy. That's nonsense. With early voting, mail-in ballots, and extended hours, voting has never been easier. These 90 to 100 million Americans aren't voting because they recognize what the political class refuses to admit. Washington, D.C. is fundamentally broken, and neither major party candidate offers real solutions. Hello, America, and welcome to the latest episode of the American Restraint podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Trepanier, author of the book American Restraint. And on this show, we discuss how to fix America. We don't do hot takes on political news. We try to look at how to fix America by shrinking Washington, D.C. Today, we're examining what 100 million non-voters reveals about America's deeper crisis. As always, please subscribe to help get the word out. The real election results. Okay, let's analyze what really happened in 2024 when we include all eligible voters, not just those who showed up. Nearly 90 million Americans, about 37% of the voting population, chose none of the above over Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. But it gets worse. Both candidates had historically high negative ratings, about 50% for each one. So that means 50% of the candidates' voters weren't really voting for that candidate. They were voting against the other option. So when 70% of Americans don't want either major party candidate, the system isn't just broken, it's illegitimate. America is at a breaking point. Last week's murder of Charlie Kirk crystallizes just how dangerous our national division has become. Regardless of your opinion of Kirk's politics, executing a public figure over political disagreements crosses every civilized boundary. What's equally disturbing is on social media how many people were celebrating his assassination just because they disagreed with his views. This isn't political discourse. It's the breakdown of civil society. We've reached the point where significant portions of Americans want their political opponents dead. Some celebrate when it happens. This is how republics die. The Charlie Kirk assassination represents a major turning point in America. Consider the factions we now have: Americans who wanted Kirk dead and likely want Trump dead. Americans who disliked Clinton, Biden, Harris, but preferred them to Trump. Americans who disliked Trump but saw him as preferable to the Democrats. Americans who genuinely support Trump. These aren't policy disagreements. These are tribes that view each other as existential threats. America is broken. The 70% of Americans who rejected both major presidential candidates mirrors another statistic. Across the past few decades, roughly 80% of Americans believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. This isn't just about politics. It's about the collapse of the American experiment. Families are disintegrating. Divorce rates remain high. Out-of-wedlock births are epidemic. Abortion is high. And parents prioritize personal fulfillment over children's needs. Religious faith, the moral foundation that built American character, is collapsing as atheists and agnostics actively attack our Judeo-Christian heritage. Trust in institutions is cratered. Americans don't trust the presidency, Congress, the media, Hollywood, big business, healthcare, you name it. We don't even trust our neighbors anymore. We become a rigid class society with extreme wealth concentration at the top and financial desperation at the bottom. Most Americans feel powerless as elites in Washington, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and Hollywood actively destroy our cultural and social fabric. America is not just broken, America is divided. Even though Americans agree the country is off track, we're bitterly divided on the solutions. Washington leadership is paralyzed by partisan warfare. Average Republicans and Democrats increasingly view each other as enemies rather than as fellow citizens with different ideas. Social media and cable news profit from division, convincing Americans that political opponents are evil rather than just mistaken. The shared institutions and common Judeo-Christian morality that once unified us are gone. We literally inhabit different realities when it comes to America's past, present, and future. America's broken, America's divided, and traditional solutions cannot help us. Presidents Obama, Bush, Trump, and Biden all promised to bring America together. All failed because the system rewards division, not unity. The Supreme Court, Congress, media, Hollywood, Wall Street, and Silicon Valley, they talk unity while practicing division because conflict serves their interests. These institutions cannot and will not solve income inequality, cultural decay, mass incarceration, healthcare costs, environmental destruction, housing prices, or family breakdown. America has become too big, too corrupt, and too captured by special interests to address the root causes. Something we've been talking a lot about on this show, hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism. Despite everything, I don't believe most Americans have abandoned the American idea. Most still believe in the founding ideals of limited government, individual liberty, and equal opportunity. They want stronger families and communities. They want restraints on the hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism that have hollowed out the middle class. Americans want to trust their institutions and leaders again. They want a thriving middle class and smaller upper and lower classes. They want an America that works for everyone, not just the oligarchs and the elite. But Washington cannot and will not deliver this America. The only solution is Convention of States. We need a second constitutional convention to resuscitate the American experiment. Another presidential election in 2028 will solve nothing. It will only deepen our divisions and accelerate our decline. You see, real solutions don't exist in Washington, D.C., or their power centers. Federal leaders have zero interest in reducing their power, wealth, or influence, or their ties with Wall Street, Silicon Valley, or other power centers. Our hope lies with the states and the people who still live in the real America. States must collectively call a constitutional convention focused on one goal, dramatically reducing federal power and returning it to the states and communities, just like in the 10th Amendment. The Convention of States resolution provides the framework, 3 amendments that limit federal power and jurisdiction, impose fiscal restraints, aka balance the budget, and establish term limits for Congress, which only 15% of Americans approve of anyway. The federal government no longer serves the American people. It serves itself and the oligarchs that control it. Convention of States offers our last, best hope for an America that works for working families instead of Washington insiders. Those 90 million Americans who refuse to vote aren't apathetic. They're waiting for real change. Convention of States can deliver that change by shrinking Washington and empowering states to innovate, experiment, and actually solve some of our biggest problems. America can be fixed, but only if we choose restraint and federalism. That's all for today. Please check back next week. We're going to summarize the top 10 ways that states can innovate and experiment to fix America, because DC can't and won't fix America. We need to shrink DC in order to save America. That's it, and have a great day.